Barron actually kind of had a comment about what an adjustment for all these guys regarding the rotation, totally different than anyone was used to. That's a lot to ask out of players who are used to playing within a role. The only player that we didn't really see tonight was Tech, and
Yep.
I honestly thought Ron's minutes would have been way higher than they were. I get he's a rookie, but like he has impacted so much transition buckets. I was honestly surprised. Were you surprised he got less than 10 minutes tonight?
I wasn't entirely surprised, if I'm being honest, just because again, he is so young and he's such a high emotion player. And that game was starting to get more intense as it went on. There were some moments where it's starting to get a little bit chippier, a little bit more physical. And when you are talking about a game of margins, you kind of want to limit those, some of those snafus if you really can. There was one moment tonight where there was somewhat of a tussle. I think tussle's even a stretch. There was just a moment where guys were talking and kind of tied up. Thankfully the refs just let it be, didn't call any technicals on that moment, which I'm glad. Which by the way, I think overall, like I was relatively pleased with how the refs called this game. Obviously there was a obviously that Tim Hardaway call was rough, right? And that was just a flat out miss. But I mean, the Knicks only had 17 attempts at the free throw line tonight. Like Jalen Brunson only had 10 attempts, which honestly is not that bad for a Jalen Brunson game. He's someone that can get to the line very early and very often. So I would say overall, like kind of like you said, I don't think anyone that was necessarily being asked to do something out of the ordinary or something that they wouldn't, normally do during the season. It's just kind of like, if anything, your role is just only going to expand. Like your minutes, like if you're an integral part of this team, your minutes are just going to go up. That's just the way it is. Like Tobias Harris played 40 minutes tonight.
And I think that has more to do with I don't think that JB fully trusts Tech in these situations. He's had an up and down year, obviously, broke his foot really late into the offseason. Maybe he didn't have a full just offseason where he was able to work on his game and get stronger. But I think just throughout the season, he's been such a roller coaster where he has good games and then it's just a stretch of bad games. That's just the way I view it. Do you view it the same way that JB is just going to rely on Tobias to play 40 minutes because he doesn't really have maybe the confidence in a Simone Fontecchio to, give some minutes while Tobias is resting?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where once you get to the postseason, you start to realize who the coaching staff really relies on and who they really trust. And I think kind of like you said, it has been a really up and down season for Simone. Like he is a good player, and there are moments where Simone has had solid performances, but I would just say as a whole, if you're just looking at how the season went, and even kind of just down the stretch, he wasn't necessarily playing his greatest basketball either. It's just one of those things where you don't really want to exacerbate the problem, make it worse, which would be putting him out in that type of scenario and putting him, out there right and early. I think again, if you're looking at potential areas where you could see these guys into the series, it is when you go home because it is less pressure. It is, a friendlier environment. It is, like inherently, inherently just easier to play when you're at your home, when you're at your home court. But I just think that as that rotation just really starts to shrink, you're just going to see some of those guys who have kind of been up and down or their roles haven't always been the most defined. That's just kind of when, for lack of better terms, their season's kind of over.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, all last week, we were talking about like Tech probably gets his minutes reduced just because Tobias is just such a steady veteran out there, um,
Mhm.
for JB. But like, you have your questions now. What this team needs, you need a backup power forward. Now, could that be Bobby Klitman? I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I like him as a prospect, but I think he needs a lot of developing, a lot of playing time. Um,
It's almost
I
like that summer league footage was just summer league.
yeah.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but I mean, like a game like tonight. I mean, if you're a Piston fan, and obviously the series isn't over, but you can definitely take notes of like what this team could possibly need in the off season, and I definitely think you have conversations about trying to upgrade that backup small forward, power forward position, or more power forward position. I don't know why I said small forward because I think Ron is kind of like uh, just penciled in with that. I thought he was going to get way more minutes, but maybe I expected too much out of a rookie. And to your point, maybe JB, relies on him a little bit more at home because it's more of an environment that he's used to, and you don't want him crashing out game one and getting suspended, which you just don't want that to happen.
Yeah, Ron's a high emotion player, and you absolutely, you love the passion that he brings. But you could even start to see it, like at the end of his 6 minutes, in the first half, you could even just start to see the emotion kind of starting to overcome it a little bit. And maybe it's just one of those moments where you kind of have to protect your rook, let him kind of sit back and really learn by observing. So, again, I don't think it's JB losing faith in anyone or like not having trust in these guys. It's just when push comes to shove, you need the guys on the court that you know for a fact are going to deliver. And a guy like
Mhm.
Tobias Harris, multiple times JB is referred to essentially as having another coach on the court. So that's a guy that when it gets to this time of the season, when it's someone that you yourself has said is like another coach, that is really hard to take off the court.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like him just being just such a focal point throughout the season, it doesn't surprise me. Um, just the veteran presence that he is. I thought all the veterans did their job tonight. It's just I think the young guys were just kind of like, oh, this is what the playoff is like. This is what
Exactly.
playing in the playoffs is like. And their vets probably talked to them in the locker room saying like, you guys are going to see what the playoffs is like. It's not like the regular season. Everything's much tighter down to the finest detail. That's why I thought tonight's game was a perfect learning experience because for 3 quarters I thought they did a pretty good job. It's just that fourth quarter collapse is where you kind of saw the inexperience, in my opinion, anyways, for the young
Yeah, I
guys.
think I think there's probably a natural assumption that the way that this team plays basketball is so naturally set up for the playoffs that it wasn't going to be as much of a transition for these guys as they maybe thought it was. I think once reality kind of smacks you in the face and you start to see that lead dwindle away and you have that raucous Madison Square Garden crowd with like every celebrity that you could think of from the city of New York, sitting courtside right there. And all of a sudden you just see that absolutely dwindle away. It's difficult for anyone, right? Even a guy like a Cade Cunningham, who is as talented as he is, who is only, who has had seasons at his age that only Oscar Robertson has replicated. Even for him, it's like 23 years old, first playoff game like, oh man, that's that's different, right? So again, I expect them to be better, and I think the level of intensity uh will only go up from this team as the series goes on. I think just the big thing was they played with a lot of energy in the first 3 quarters, and I think they just expected to just be able to continue to play at that level in the fourth. But the fourth quarter, especially in the postseason, is when teams turn things up to their highest level. And that, like you said, is like when you have to be at your highest level of intensity and execution, both physically and mentally.